Any good stories from the road?
Pipe up.
I wish we'd gotten seen a little bit more out of our punter.
I'm starting to puke.
It makes my stomach hurt.
I thought he was going to die.
I'm starting to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
He's on the probiotics.
Is Georgia playing the 1985 Bears this weekend or what?
A lot of Todd talk.
Rat poison proof.
They're mongoose.
We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that. The hunting that we do will be done from us going the other direction.
Wake up, Jake.
I'm tired, dude.
What's going on, fellas? We've got some
day.
scheduling news to start the show tonight. Georgia and Florida are going streaking. They are continuing their streak in Jacksonville at least until 2025. We weren't sure. We heard some rumors, heard some reports that it might leave the confines of TIAA Everbank Jacksonville Gator Bowl Stadium, but it's sticking around. So, guys, there was that news today, and then there's the news that Penn State and Michigan State will play in Detroit on Black Friday. A lot of people were mad about that one. Georgia fans, I think, were just kind of like, all right, whatever. And I think that when you have both of those matchups kind of, I guess, pitted against one another, when you look at the news today, I don't know that the fact that there was no buzz around the Georgia-Florida game is a good thing. I think it probably would have been better. We would have gotten a better indicator if people did react to it the way they did about Penn State and Michigan State. What do y'all think?
I didn't even know that the Penn State-Michigan State thing had happened.
I didn't either.
Yeah, we were like neck deep in recruiting stuff and trying to get the Georgia news out. But man, I'm telling you, from what I've heard in the past 48 hours, I would not put a lot of. I would not start inviting my friends and family to future Georgia Florida home and home games. I wouldn't quite do that yet. Just saying. And today's news doesn't affect that really at all. I'm not sure they're going to be stadium renovations, period. I'm not sure when they're going to be if they are there. I think the renewal of this thing kind of pushes it past 2025. Wes, you and I had a phone conversation today where I kind of talked to you about some of the stuff I had heard. I think there's some politics being played with the renovations and the current mayor talking about the renovations right now. There's a lot going on there, man. And I don't necessarily think that ultimately that the University of Georgia, I know what Kirby wants. I don't know that Kirby wants it so bad that he's going to quite get it, though. We'll see. A lot can change.
Is that not the narrative, though, around Georgia fans? What Kirby wants, Kirby gets, and he wants this so bad. It's interesting to hear that you don't think he's that desperate about it. And when we read the breaking news from our guy, Claude Felton, a Georgia legend, great American.
News item in 5.
The subject of the email just said news.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was happening. And it was funny because it was right around the time that we were waiting on a commitment, or I think the commitment had just happened. So I was like, gosh, what else is about to happen? It's just so anticlimactic. And I think that's really my takeaway about Georgia, Florida, and Jacksonville is if there's any reason for it to move, maybe it's just time to change some things up. I don't know. That's just kind of my takeaway from today. It was just kind of, maybe it was all the recruiting news that made everything pale in comparison. And we've talked about it so many times. I promise we will talk about every commitment Georgia's picked up since we spoke last, which was Sunday, and 3 guys have committed to the Dogs since then. And Jake Russo will be in to talk to us about that. It was just it's kind of a ho-hum news update. And I feel like that used to be a bigger deal.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul. Go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, here's why I think it is because I don't really know that we should have expected anything different here. They were under an agreement through 2023. It felt like a no-brainer to extend that to 2024 and 2025 to buy them some time. I mean, with the uncertainty of when those renovations are happening, if those renovations are happening in Jacksonville, Georgia and Florida are both going to have to plan around that. That they've got to have some sort of an idea ahead of time, that they will be hosting a, rivalry game that they haven't hosted since 94, 95. So 30 years. To me, I think that all along I expected the extension to be used for 24 and 25. And then if this game was going to move out of Jacksonville, it would happen after that. When a completely new contract was getting started. And so, this is just kind of a continuation of what was already agreed upon. They had clearly had a 2025 date out there that they had at least mentally, said, hey, we're going to, keep this game in Jacksonville through that time. But the extension doesn't say, well, there's another extension at the end of it for 26 and 27. It's not like they're doing 2-year deals. So at the end of this, they're going to have to come to a new agreement with Jacksonville, with each other, whoever that may be. And we're going to be in a new world of college football at that point. The SEC will have 2 new teams. The playoff will have 8 new teams. Georgia, Florida won't be on CBS anymore. It'll be on ESPN or ABC, or won't be being played at 3:30 in all likelihood. It'll be, a primetime game or a noon game or whatever. College football is going to look different. So I think that the 24-25 agreement just kind of made sense to keep things status quo as much as possible in a time of change. And it bought them some time to reassess things together.
Palmer,
it really throws off our Taco Lou thing, our post-game Taco Lou. But I want to see this thing played at night. I want to see this thing played at 7:30. I want to go out.
I think we could hit Taco Lou for lunch, though.
Nah, we'd hit Taco Lou on Friday night. That's how that would work. We'd have to cut out 2 dudes.
That place rocks.
Yeah, we'd have to cut out 2 dudes seafood, but we'd hit Taco Lou.
We'd still hit the barbecue spot.
Yeah, maybe we hit 2 dudes for lunch on Saturday, but missed Bearded Pig at the alternated or something. But no, I mean I don't know, man. I still think Jacksonville's got some cards to play on this, and they double the money. It's going to be hard to turn it down. It's just, I mean, you sit there and listen, you go back and you read Kirby's quotes. Wes, I don't know if you've done this. I think you may have.
Yep.
You go back and you read Kirby's quotes, and he mentions the recruiting thing. He also mentions the money.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirby, from what I understand, he makes $10 million a year. Not a big spender of his own money, big spender of Georgia's money. Loves to spend Georgia's money.
Well, what did Georgia lead the country in? Lead the conference in?
Recruiting
spending
budget.
money on recruiting. So
yeah. I think they also led the country in revenue as well.
I've got Kirby's quote for you if you want me to read it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just do story time with Palmer.
He said,
I wish I had some music.
There's really quality benefits to both. When it comes down to it, there's a very, very basic element of everything comes back to, number 1, money, and number 2, recruiting and getting good players. I firmly believe that we'll be able to sign better players by having it as a home and home because we'll have more opportunities to get them on campus. But I also think there's a financial factor that factors into that with the game being there and being able to make more money for the university possibly there. You have to weigh both of those and make a really good decision. And
I mean, we've
factor that factors, baby. Factor that factors.
I read that and I thought, man,
using the double factor, baby.
Factor square.
Palmer, you and I were talking before we hopped on here about the student perspective of this. If it ever did go to home and home, woo, that fall break and Georgia students not going down to St. Simon's.
It would be interesting because, and like we were saying, for those that don't necessarily know, the University of Georgia fall break falls on the Friday, just one day before the game every year. Students make the trek down to St. Simons and enjoy the day on the beach. And then a lot of folks make the trip from St. Simons to Jacksonville. A lot of Georgia fans stay in that St. Simons area to, relive their glory days, and make that trek as well.
Georgia's glory days are never ending right now.
Jake,
the Braves must have scored a couple runs.
Little Obama over here, little Marcel Ozuna bomb.
No,
Both
Bruce
the
isn't on
Obros
yet. Bruce
also
isn't
having
on
a
yet
good
for
one,
the O-bombs.
Yeah, no bomb.
No, but I mean, it would be interesting because as somebody that has been to Jacksonville, I've never been to Gainesville. I've driven through there and stopped at a gas station or whatever.
A Flash Foods.
I don't even know what I stopped at. Just
What
some
town
sort
are
of
we
gas
talking about?
station at Gainesville.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean,
you're not missing much.
But
No,
I mean,
it's really not the best college town.
But I think it would. But I think it would be cool to experience a game.
Go hang out with all those ACRs down there, as Andy Staples calls them, Alachua County residents.
I think it would be cool to do something different.
Yeah.
And maybe that's somebody, I'm coming from a perspective of, I'm not from the state of Georgia. I didn't grow up in a household of Georgia fans. Really Georgia, Florida is a relatively new rivalry to me. And
we're throwing a pity party, okay? We're not going to feel sorry for you. We're not going to feel sorry for you because you didn't grow up with all those awesome things.
I don't want you to feel sorry.
If there is a reason that Kirby does want to stay in Jacksonville, it's because the Dogs have been chomping some gator tail down there. 5-2 since Kirby took the job. One of those years was his first season on the job. One of them was COVID. Not making excuses. I'm just saying those were two pretty good years for Florida to catch Georgia.
It certainly makes it harder if you've got to go into the swamp every year. But on the flip side of things, I really do think it would be an incredible atmosphere to see, Florida come into Sanford Stadium, the not so intimidating, not top 5 in the SEC Sanford Stadium.
Yeah, I do want it to be played as a home and home at some point. I hope there's some stadium renovations if they do, decide to keep this game in Jacksonville. Because, listen, I don't like making the trip down. I flew down there last year, and Palmer and I were talking about it earlier today. I'm like, man, I'm thinking about going into my own pocket to do it again this year because it sucks.
You can't get out of there fast enough.
Yeah, like it sucks so bad. Like I flew out at like 6:45 a.m. last year. I mean, did I have a drink in the Delta Sky Club at 6:45 a.m.? You don't have to know.
If you're not going down there to watch Georgia beat Florida, if you're a Georgia fan, or play 72 holes of golf, it's not, I don't know. I would want to get out of there pretty quickly too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get it. But I don't know. I mean, I think playing in Jacksonville, as things stand right now, I think playing in Jacksonville every year is advantageous to Georgia. If Georgia ever gets, if Georgia ever kind of slides back a little bit or this thing evens out, I think Florida ends up with a little bit of an advantage. But here's another thing you think about too. Georgia flies out of Athens. They fly in directly into Jacksonville. Florida bus is over. It's not that big of a deal. You end up with a lot of Georgia fans there. I think when Georgia's better, this thing's better for Georgia to be at a neutral site every year. But that's not always going to be the case. But it really does just come down to money, man. It's just going to come down to money because they make so much already. And then the city of Jacksonville, I want to say that the numbers were there's about $12 to $15 million worth of revenue, maybe more, that flows into Jacksonville for that entire weekend, right? Well, Jacksonville's paying each team $1.5 million right now. I think it goes up to $1.75 million next through the extension, maybe, or maybe it's 1.7. It's somewhere in there. The city of Jacksonville comes up with $4 million to pay to these teams, and then plus they split the gate, plus they, get the travel expenses. That's another thing too. Folks don't think about it. Georgia pays its own expenses to get down to Gainesville. They pay not a dime to get to Jacksonville. They get their expenses paid for. They get like a stipend that probably they go under and make a little more money on. And listen, it makes the world go round, and that's a big part of recruiting as well. So I mean, it may end up being a drop in the bucket. I don't know. I just know that I don't really care to go down there every year. I would love to just have like an every other year trip.
I can tell you this, though. I certainly don't want it go into, any sort of Jacksonville, Atlanta deal, because I mean,
no, that's not natural. We don't need that.
And
I don't
feel
need
like
to ever go into Atlanta again, personally. But
Atlanta and
Jacksonville.
I mean, yeah, both franchises really strong candidates. Just move everything to London. I think that people would be all right with that.
Georgia,
Rhett
Florida,
Womack,
and London.
some people would, not everybody. Rhett Womack from work in Brooklet, Georgia. Rhett's told us that it's been a tough adjustment for him at work to still make this show, and he is on the clock talking to us about the Dogs. I appreciate it, Rhett. Guys, we got to talk about it, and it's kind of played out by now, but Marcus Rosemary Jack Saints speeding tickets, not ideal. Can't hear you, Jake.
I was looking where Brooklet, Georgia is. You can get to Jacksonville from Jacksonville to Athens and vice versa, somehow by driving through Brooklet, Georgia. So
I'm not sure I've
it's
through
it's
there.
a little bit southeast of Statesboro.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit southeast of Statesboro, kind of between Statesboro and Savannah.
Well, if you drive back down, stop by and give Red a high five.
Yeah, off of Highway 80. That's awesome. I never knew Brooklet, Georgia existed. Sorry.
You're good.
Jake,
Maybe I won't drive. Maybe I won't drive 90 and a 45 through Brooklet, Georgia.
When you pull up a picture of Brooklet, Georgia on Google Images, it's just a picture of a pond.
Yeah,
the same thing. It's the same.
100%.
I mean, Red is working underwater for all we know. But we do appreciate it, Rhett. We appreciate everybody who comments with us, engages with us, and talks about the Dogs.
Absolutely, dude. Thanks for tuning in at work.
We will get to Riddell, who is a beast, when Jake Roos comes on. Promise. We will talk about some better stories and better news than this. I'm tired of talking about it. I know y'all are too, but this is the Georgia show, and we can't just ignore it. What's going on, man? What's the solution? I think that's the question really now to ask is there a solution? Is it just guys making mistakes? I see the side of it that now that there's been plenty of warnings, now that there's been the come to Jesus meetings about it, this is a pretty bad look.
Yeah.
It's pretty tough.
And honestly, I really think, based on what I've heard, I think, you're going to see some suspensions out of this, because I think Kirby's got to do something a little bit different than I personally think Kirby should announce a suspension, because what's going to happen here is over the summer, if a kid, decides he wants to run 75 and a 50 or a 75 and a 45 and he ends up hurting somebody, they are going to get whacked. Not by the NCAA, but by public perception, ESPN and everybody else. They're going to get crushed.
Well, that someone in Athens, Clark County, someone on the council, somebody, like, there's going to be some sort of outcry about this. You cover small town politics enough.
Yeah, somebody's chasing ink right now as far as all that goes.
There is
a councilman trying his best to get Mark Weiser or to get somebody to listen to him so that he can say something about something right now. 100%.
Yeah. And that's, not that that's going to end Kirby Smart's career, but it's the public perception.
Yeah.
It's the annoyance. It's the fly in the ointment, and it's totally avoidable.
Yeah,
Well,
and that's why I say Kirby needs to come out and say something, because ultimately, if somebody gets hurt, before the end of the summer or whatever, then you're left there looking like you did nothing. Then you're having to say after the fact, well, we ran him. Okay, man.
We handled it internally.
Yeah.
Well, and along those same lines, I just don't know that sure, as Craig points out, a big loss against UT Martin, if Marcus Rosemy or Jamon Dumas-Johnson or Ra Thomas or Danilo Morissette or whoever, doesn't play against UT Martin, then we're going to make those connections. Just like, a lot of us made connections about Ra not seeing the field during G-Day. He
or Javon Bullard not making the trip for Missouri. We all know what that was about.
Yeah, exactly. But I just think you're right. I think it's better if it publicly gets announced. It makes a point, and it makes a point that you are doing something about it. It's not just after the fact. Well, we handled it internally, like we discussed, and we don't discuss those matters with you all. Whatever Kirby says, it doesn't need to be that. It needs somebody needs to be made an example of. Do I think that they need to get kicked off the team? No.
That is a take that's a little too far for me.
Yeah, me too. I wouldn't beat Kirby up over it, and I wouldn't beat anybody else up over it. Simply we've had this, we went round and round on the board about this today, simply for the disrespect factor of like bringing in guys to educate and talking to you and sitting face to face with you and saying, listen, this is why you shouldn't do this. And then them turning around and doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So that factor in and of itself is the one reason why I would not fault Kirby Smart one bit for the only thing I would fault Kirby for in this situation really is to learn that they just glossed over and did nothing, which I know is not going to happen.
No, that's not going to happen. No chance.
And honestly, I'm being a little preemptively critical if they just do the internal thing and say nothing at all. Maybe it's next week at SEC spring meetings. Maybe, I don't know, that he says something, that, these guys are probably going to be facing some suspensions. You don't have to get specific about it or whatever, but ultimately this whole, we'll handle it internally. It can blow up in your face if another one happens and somebody gets hurt. It just can't.
To me,
go ahead, Palmer.
I was going to say, to me, Greg says 3 games. Craig and Greg both say 3 or 4.
Brother.
I think 3 is the right number because you look at Georgia's schedule, and obviously there's a football factor to this as well. But
Kirby can't help who the first 3 teams are. That's a win-win for him. You win the public perception, sit him down. Hey, sorry, I know it's just UT Martin, not that he has to answer, not that he would answer to anyone about that specifically, but 3 games, pretty stiff, and it sends a message.
The number 3 makes you miss an SEC game. And I think that sends a message across, to these players of, look, you're doing damage to yourself because you're not out there on the field getting to, play. You're not getting out there to showcase your talent, and you're hurting your team too. And I think that if you make, an example, especially of guys like Jamon and Marcus, who are both upperclassmen, leaders on this team, I think if you make an example, and again, it doesn't have to be anything over the top, but I think that action needs to be taken, and that ultimately does fall on Kirby Smart.
The Jamon ones is that it's a little wonky for me because his deal, he had a racing deal that I think the racing charge got dropped,
and it happened. It happened before,
and it preempted the entire the tragedy. So it was. I mean, it was irresponsible and it was kind of the tip, but it was kind of the tip of the iceberg. But, I think when you look at Morissette, when you look at Rosemy, those come after the accident, after the additional education, after the efforts to kind of get through to these guys. Those are a little more
just so annoying for me. Jake and I, on this issue, you've brought up the fact that, you were a kid once, you had a kid that made some mistakes. Palmer, I don't want to speak for you. I certainly, wasn't too experienced driving the first time I got a speeding ticket. But then it's that whole element of telling your kid something, specifically, and then seeing them do it again at any age. That's annoying. And I know Kirby Smart cares a lot about these players, man.
I mean, I don't know how old your oldest is, Wes. 3? Is that right? Yeah.
So I'm dealing with this daily.
Yeah, you look at them right in the face. You say, don't pick that up. Don't do it.
And they don't break eye contact.
And pick it up. I mean, they bend their knees and just hold on to that, just staring at your pupils.
Jake does that with me every day. He's like, don't do that, Palmer.
Yeah,
right in his face.
It's not unlike that.
I know where Palmer lives too. He's doing some dangerous stuff.
Nathan Johnston asks the age-old question right now. Is NIL ruining college athletics? It seems like we're seeing the consequences of kids in all caps, 18 to 22, getting their hands on so much money. I don't know, man.
No.
These guys had fast cars. These guys had fast cars before NIL, and there were brownies on spring break. There were downtown Athens. I mean, it's just different stuff.
It's a contributing factor, Nate. It really is. And shout out to Nate too. Nate's good people. I know Nate. I know his folks. I enjoy conversating with Nate from time to time. He is a good dude. And a very good sports guy too. He's got his own thing going. And he's awesome. So, but I don't think it's ruining it, but that is a definitely contributing factor. I mean, when you put 500, 400, 600 horsepower under the hood, in Jalen Carter's case, I think almost 800 horsepower or 700, it's hard, man. I mean, I had a Chevy Silverado 1995 with a 350 engine in it whenever I first started driving. And I'll tell you right now, I used to get on those back roads when there was nobody there, hit a long straightaway. I drove so fast one time that the plastic bed liner flew out of my truck. It didn't. But, I mean, that's how it was. So I'm not judging these guys for what they're doing, but I also never, I was 16, and I also never, had somebody come and sit down with me, or had a scholarship on the line, or lost a friend to a bad accident a few months before. I never got 2 tickets in 8 days. All of that. I mean, at some point you got to get through to them, and I think a suspension is what's going to do that. And I think as a cover your ass move, sorry for the language there, but I think as a CYA move for Kirby Smart, you need to come out and say something about what you're going to do about it. That way, if something bad happens, you can say, we've addressed it. And I know it's not just a Georgia issue either. I think if you went and pulled speeding tickets from every county in America and, went through with your little highlighter and highlighted every college football player that's gotten a speeding ticket, you would run into some pretty gnarly stuff.
Yeah, for sure, man.
But also, to go back to Nate's original point about the NIL, is that, for every story we see like this, we also see, Micah Morris being able to pay for his dad's dialysis, Dan Jackson being able to pay for a scholarship. So there are not a scholarship, but for his school. But, for every good or for every bad NIL, effect of it, there's a good story as well. In my
Palmer's
opinion.
trying to land an NIL deal of his own. Jay Martin, 24, asking us what the best case scenario for the defensive line and offensive line is in recruiting. We will get to that. But first, we are going to get to the threads on Jake Rowe right now.
Yeah, baby.
First time
I get to model for the first time.
Let me get Marcus Rosemary-Jack Saint's name off the screen. All right.
I've got a mirror thing going on, so I don't know if I'm turning right or turning
No,
left.
you're good.
Eric Zoolander.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone can see the shirt.
Yeah.
Philadelphia Dawgs.
Jake,
That
when
is
are we getting
from.
ours?
I don't know, man. Come get it.
I'm playing golf with you on Saturday.
I'll bring it.
Let's
I'll
go.
bring it.
From our friends at Breaking Tee. Depending on which golf course you're playing at, this apparel may be allowed. It may just be an undershirt. We'll leave that up to you to decide. Look at that. The back-to-back with Stetson is sold out. That's the first time I've noticed that.
Because my dude down in St. Mary's, Georgia, had it tucked into his jeans, and I told people about it, and they sold out immediately.
I really do like everything about that shirt. I hate that it's sold out.
It's a cool shirt, man.
Yeah.
It's a cool shirt.
Have the folks in LA started buying Stetson shirts? They could.
I think Stetson had a pretty good first meeting with the LA media today, and that's not the toughest media market, but it's not easy on you either.
My man Stetson's hair. Listen, he looks like he's getting ready for his bat mitzvah, dude.
There is a Stetson effect here. You're right, Jake. He does.
He totally does. It's like a little John Favreau look. I mean, I don't even know if John Favreau is Jewish, but
every Stetson shirt is sold out.
Have they?
Stetson got his contract. He got his contract, and he bought them all.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
I'm okay. Yeah,
I'm a little angry that Brock Bowers shirts aren't sold out, because everybody knows how I feel about Brock Bowers.
Right. Well, we just need to buy him up then. Anyways, there still are some really good shirts to pick from over at Breaking Tee, and there's a link in this episode description. In every episode description, whether you are watching on YouTube live, on replay, or listening on podcast via Apple or Spotify, check out Breaking Tee for your next Georgia shirt. All right.
Let's just sit here in silence until Roosh joins us.
No, I wish we could. I wish
Get
we
here.
could.
He might have gotten shanked by a meth head.
He tends to show up right when we start talking about him. But
can we do it like we
say his name 3
doing
times?
Candyman or Bloody Mary? You know,
Yeah.
just
Jake Roos.
Beetlejuice.
it might work. Ro, you had an interesting take today about Georgia's offense.
Yeah.
And what they're doing to recruit it and build it and fortify it. And it all starts with the tight end position right now. And there's no denying, when you look at college football from top to bottom in this country and in any other country where they happen to play it, Georgia's tight end university. And that's pretty special. Because
they got a stud. They got an absolute stud today in Jaden Riddell. I was talking with somebody that I love talking ball with, because I know they get it. And they were talking about Jaden Riddell and some of the things that maybe he brings to the table that Brock Bowers doesn't. And I tend to agree with it. With Brock Bowers, you get a freak explosive athlete. Listen, that his gait, the way he runs, the way he moves is
first
wonky.
step
is
just like dynamite.
It is. It's dynamite. But listen, he runs like he's got an armload of groceries and he's trying to get them to mom before her diabetic coma kicks in.
You know what he kind of runs like? He kind of runs like a player on NCAA football, like a video game.
Yeah, he does a little bit.
He doesn't look like he's going anywhere, but he's moving.
It's just elbows, and it looks funky. Jaden Riddell is a really smooth, graceful athlete who I think is a better before the catch tight end guy. I think he's a guy that's going to separate and separate with quickness. I think he brings a lot to the table. And the guy I talked to said, hey, he's not losing any foot races either. He's a stud, man. He's a big time tight end. This is a huge get for Georgia, especially after losing Landon Thomas. I really like the duo that Georgia has at tight end with Colton Heinrich and Jaden Riddell at this point. I got those 2 in 3 days. But my point today, you would go back to the 2018 class that ultimately the group that they signed at the top of this class ended up being kind of a disaster.
There he is.
But you'd have to go back to the 2018 class to find, to look at Georgia's top 5 recruits and see, a majority of offensive players. And right now you've got that. And, for the first time, I think maybe ever under Kirby Smart, and some might say this is good, some might say this is bad. I think it's good because I think this is where Georgia needs shoring up more than anything. You're looking at skill guys.
Why is he making that face, man?
I don't know. You can't do that to somebody though. You can't just flash that in front of somebody.
I mean, he looks like he's
the reason why it's happening though.
He is, dude. He's a beast.
He looks like he's making eyes against across the bar.
All right,
he's a beast. He's a good man.
He is a good dude.
He deserves all the good things. That right there catches you off guard every time.
All right, sorry.
Absolutely.
Dell back up.
But you look at Georgia's top 5 recruits as a quarterback, it's a wide receiver, it's a tight end. And there's no running back, there's no offensive lineman in there. And I don't think you're going to end up with an offensive lineman top 5 in this class. There aren't many that could be top 5 in Georgia's class this year. Just from a ranking standpoint, there aren't even possibilities. So ultimately, I like what Georgia's doing on offense. I really do. And I think they're obviously going to recruit defense really well. I'm not worried at all about the lines of scrimmage because they got a tackle commit that I really like this week as well. Georgia's on a roll right now. For my man Matthew C over here, are you not entertained? Are you not entertained after this big recruiting weekend? I love you, dude.
Jay Cruz, welcome in. We just started talking about this. You have impeccable timing as always. This tight end thing, man, 5, 10, 15 years ago, you say a school's tight end you, like, who cares? That's good for you unless you're, Miami. But Georgia is getting some freaks, man. It's almost like that NBA mentality of getting positionless players.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys are like hybrid wide receiver, running back, tight end, just fast as hell dudes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that, they continue to recruit the position. They continue to develop the position. I mean, like you said, Georgia's tight end they've really taken over. It feels like a linebacker to some degree with under Glenn Schumann and what they've done there. I mean, they're pumping guys out on the defensive front. Things are going really well right now is really the only way to say it. But, I agree with Jake too, that what they're doing on the offensive side of the ball is a little bit uncharacteristic, but I think it's really advantageous for them over the course of the long term. They're going to be able to get those defensive guys. I feel confident in that. They're going to get their fair share, and that's honestly where those guys that's where those guys thrive to some degree. Kirby Smart's going to thrive in evaluations for those positions. So I think you're smart to go ahead, stock your cupboards with your offensive guys early on, and then focus as you go into the season. Once those guys, not that there's any kids out there necessarily doubting what Georgia's doing, but the opportunity to put it all on paper and see it once again put in front of you, I think is going to be big for a lot of these defensive guys come official visits this fall.
I'm doubting Georgia.
You're just trying to make Kirby's recording at the end of the year.
8-5.
Yeah. Contrarian Palmer.
With a Gator Bowl loss.
I told Palmer all last year feels like a Sugar Bowl season, like all the way up until like game 8. I was like, yeah, it feels like a Sugar Bowl this year. I'm going to say that again this year, except I feel like it feels like a Sugar Bowl. That would mean playoff.
Yeah, that would mean the CFP. So let's talk about the other guy, Dylan Brooks, with somewhat of a comparison to Rob Gronkowski that I agree with, I think. I think if you're looking at what you got right now on Georgia's roster, it's like Riddell's more the Brock Bowers and Heinrich's more the Oscar Delp.
I could see that. Yeah, I think that's probably a fair way to put it.
They're going to get heavy metal poisoning for all this mullet. They're going to end up.
I had, a ginger mullet, man. That's
between him and if they get Sammy Brown, Tate Ratledge sticks around another year. Jake Roos perusing the sidelines, just mullet everywhere.
The peroxide dogs.
I think no, I think that the Heinrich pickup is a very interesting one. I think that Georgia's clearly a lot higher on him than the rankings would show. And I had a chance actually to speak to one of his 7-on-7 coaches the other day, who is the defensive coordinator at Chaminade Madonna. He was talking about working with Colton. And I said, from an opposing coach's standpoint, what do you see in this kid? And he was like, man, he just does it all. He said he comes about it the right way, and he really just does it all. He, I said, I think that he's a guy that people will think of as maybe like a chain mover, a guy you turn to on third down. And he said, look, if you need him to do that, he can. But if you sleep on him, he's going to go over top of you too.
He's good, man.
Yeah.
I'm watching his highlights right now and very impressed.
Yeah. So,
when I pull Huddle up, it looks glitchy on the replay, so I just didn't pull it up tonight.
Yeah.
But I encourage y'all to watch his Huddle, man. And you're gonna have to scroll down because everything at the top of his page is basketball. Unless you want to watch him hoop, he's good at that too.
Now, let me tell you something about this too. Now, some context that needs to be had. Down there at Cardinal Gibbons, all right, Colton Heinrich is not playing against Sisters of the Poor.
No.
Okay. He's down there playing against studs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about dudes and ballers.
I saw American Heritage right here. And
yeah.
It's a real deal division. There's no question about it. And
those dudes get off the bus, they get eat up by skeeters, and then they run 4.2s.
And he's playing 7-on-7 for DEF CON, which is like one of the great 7-on-7 programs out there too.
That's that's the name of a 7-on-7 team.
DEF CON.
Jeez.
Yeah. You got a brand, dude.
It's still not the best. The best one is the Louisiana Bootleggers.
The
Bootleggers is great. I don't even know if Dante what was that kid's name? Dante Jackson. Yeah, Dante Jackson or Jimmy Details down there leading those boys. I don't know if the boys
sounds like an episode of The Sopranos.
Yeah, the fact that
it does kind of yeah. I don't know if the boys ever really understood what bootleggers meant, but but it was they called each other the bootleggers because they played for the boot down in I'm not Canadian, by the way, but they played for the state of Louisiana. But yeah, bootleggers was always one of my favorites.
Absolutely, man.
All right, now let's get to this fella.
Boy, a guy that not a lot of people know a lot about.
My collarbone's broken.
Look at that guy, dude. He looks
huge.
I mean, he could play like a Russian henchman. There's no
Speaking of The Sopranos, man, he looks like Anthony Jr.
He looks like that dude in the episode where they lost the Russian in the woods.
Yeah.
That's what he looks
Pine Barrens.
Like. Yeah, Pine Barrens.
He's huge, man.
I need clavicle surgery right now from that photo.
6'7.5", 335 from I don't know how to pronounce that. Athol, New York.
Basically Buffalo. He's
the son. He's the son of that Russian.
Yeah.
He's broken some tables before.
Yes.
The Russian in the Pine Barren episode ended up getting to northern upstate New York and raising a family, and this kid is his kid.
Yeah. The kid's a bit of
it's a totally different show when Rusty's not on.
I'm loving the Sopranos references.
And I mean that in the best way possible. Like, you get two different kind of vibes. Like, I feel like we're on our best behavior a little bit more when Rusty's on.
I'm loving the Sopranos references as somebody that's in season 5.
All right, we won't spoil it for you.
So this kid's a Sasquatch, man. He's hard to track down. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, doesn't talk a lot, doesn't give a lot of quotes. Very difficult guy. So what
damn Sasquatch.
I reached out to his coach and got some really good information on Harrison. I encourage people to go read that piece. I was pretty proud of how that one turned out. He gave some really eye-opening stuff. Also, if you haven't read the one I did with Colton Heinrich's mom, go read that one, which is, what was the quote she said? I want to make sure I get it right.
She said, Georgia checks all the boxes.
It was like everything they're doing is exactly what you want for your son or something like that. Absolutely everything they're doing is what you want for your son. That's some strong wording.
And she tweeted that Colton's locked it down. She's a former basketball coach and his dad is in law enforcement and actually like showed up on the K-9 unit at one of the school shootings down there a few years ago. Like everything about his upbringing is, by the book.
Yeah.
And doesn't seem like there's going to be too many recruiting games played with him. So by the time he gets, I imagine he'll get a bump in his recruiting status. And once Georgia fans see his film and see how special this kid is, man, this is a crazy week, not just for tight ends, but for Georgia in general. And it all comes on the heels of that scavenger hunt weekend. And we said that it felt like, no, I didn't say that, Craig Lawson. It felt like that weekend could be something that we talk about for a long time.
Yeah. Even the guys who didn't commit, you planted seeds that you'll see grow for months to come. And, you have a guy like Jeremiah Smith on campus. How does that play into it? It was his official visit. I'm always a big fan, like I've said on the show before, that you want either, in my mind, the first or the last official visit. You either want to set the stage for the rest of them or you want to be the closer. And, Georgia getting the opportunity to host Smith and have him there for it, I think can really pay off for him in the long term. I'm not saying he's going to flip, but I think that any positive momentum that they have with him right now stems heavily back to that weekend. But this Harrison kid's really interesting. Like I said, not a guy you know a lot about, kind of keeps to himself, but boy, in what's considered a down year nationally for offensive line, to go find a body like that and to get a chance to see him in person and host him and pull him from Buffalo, New York, I think that there's a lot to be said for the job they did with him.
I'm told, a few little inside nuggets here. I am told that of the 3 guys that have committed in 3 consecutive days, Tate Ratledge and Austin Blaskey spent the most time around them. By the way, I didn't bring up Jaden Riddell in terms of mullets a minute ago. He also has an epic one, maybe the best one of the whole crew.
Feathered, very feathered.
Yeah, Tate Ratledge and Austin Blaskey spent a lot of time with those guys. And again, I brought this up. These were 2 of the guys, just 2 of the ones that were summoned back to Athens from, spending time with family. And neither one of them lives like right down the road either, mind you. So they came back, got it done. Those 2 deserve some major kudos among some other players. I'm not exactly sure who else was there, but I knew that both of those guys were coming. Secondly, Roos, one of the biggest pieces of info, one of the most intriguing pieces of info that I was able to gather on Marcus Harrison was when I spoke to Casey Poe yesterday. Roos and I kind of had to team up to get Casey Poe on the phone. Who is one of the top interior offensive linemen in the country, who Georgia's also maybe recruiting to play tackle. We can really spin a web there. He's on the Ernest Green path, it seems like, from what I'm hearing. That he basically spent a lot of time with Marcus Harrison too. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, dude, did you get a sense that was coming?" He said, Yeah, I did. It came down to Georgia and Wisconsin, which Wisconsin really wasn't up there on that list. And we don't have as big of a Wisconsin presence on our site right now, so we didn't have that covered really. There wasn't even an offer in the system at the time, so I did have to put that in there. And I saw that he had reported one on Twitter. But listen, man, to me, like I'm sitting here, I'm watching that kid's film, I'm thinking about the big, not quite, but maybe a little bit Wu-Tangy W on the side of the helmet. And I'm thinking to myself, that's the kind of cat that you're looking at here in about 4 years, maybe 5. He's getting his name called on Sunday, and you're like, oh my God, he looks like he's going to murder somebody, maybe tonight.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of guy, Marcus Harrison, Jesus Christ. That's scary, but yeah, if you go watch this film, you'll see what I'm talking about.
That kid looks like he has bad intentions, dude.
He does.
Yeah, dude, he looks mean. He looks mean, dude.
And he moves incredibly well. He's a dynamic run blocker right now. He's going to have to learn how to pass pro, but Stacey Searles is good at teaching that. Stacey Searles works with young offensive linemen extremely well. I mean, he's done a really good job of that throughout his career. I like Marcus Harrison. I think he's a guy that has a chance to rise up the rankings, and even if he doesn't, Georgia's going to trust its evals because, guys, when you recruit like Georgia does and you take commitments, I don't care if they're 3 stars or not in May, they're not 3 stars to Georgia.
Well,
Georgia knows they can string. They know they can string that kid along right there for a little while if they didn't really, really want to take him.
Sure.
They want to take him.
Yeah, and Rusty mentioned too that going into the weekend, the kid was a take. Then he got to campus, and they were like 1,000% question about it. I mean, he was a take before he even arrived, and then he got on there, and they said, his coach said, "Huh."
6'8" with a 7-foot wingspan. I mean,
yeah, 84-inch wings. Yeah.
And coach said, coach made a point to say that his chest is bigger than his belly, which you don't see all the time. So.
I don't know why. I'll always think of Ben Cleveland when somebody says that.
Oh man.
One of these days I'll have to tell my first time I saw Ben Cleveland's story. It's such a good one.
Sounds like a Bark After Dark.
Why wait? Yeah, it sounds like Bark After Dark for sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to see Stacey Searles up in upstate New York. Just culture clashing up there, doing his job, doing his thing, getting this guy on the hook.
I've just got this vision of Marcus, what's his last name? Harrison. Yeah, the Marvin Harrison thing really throws me off on him.
Yeah.
The Marcus Harrison taking him into Buffalo or something, getting some wings, and Stacey Searles, challenging him to eat the hot one. Stacey rubs his eye, and it just gets out of whack. It's just like, oh God, my eye, Jesus.
This Harrison kid looks like he would just dump the sauce into his own eyes.
Yeah. Right before the game, like that. Was that John Henderson?
Yeah, the John Henderson slap.
Hell slapped out of him.
Yeah.
Come on, Bob.
All right, let's land this Chinook. Chopping wood. I'm going to chop wood about Stetson Bennett's first impression in LA, and I'm not pulling up the whole press conference, but I'll put a link to it in the description here. Stetson Bennett and Matthew Stafford in the same press conference. What's not to love from a Georgia perspective there? But it's cool to see the 2 generations of Dawgs. Matthew Stafford pretty self-deprecating about how old he is, and Stetson Bennett learning a lot from Matthew Stafford. And he's a pretty self-deprecating guy too, talking about how much he has to learn and how much he's just trying to hang on in camp right now. But we haven't heard from Stetson in a little while, and getting to hear from him on the job as a rookie was pretty refreshing, pretty interesting stuff, and a good break from all this recruiting news because we got to come up for air somehow. So check it out.
Did you know Matthew Stafford and Clayton Kershaw played high school together?
Heard that. Heard that a time or two.
And Jake Fromm went to the college or Little League World Series.
Yeah, I heard that too. That's crazy.
Ryan Fitzpatrick went to Harvard.
Yeah.
People also forget that Dylan Raiola's dad was Matthew Stafford's center.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to hear a lot of.
No
way. You're joking there, Wes.
That's one we are going to hear a lot of. All right, I want to. Are we chopping wood or are we doing dog signs? I forget.
Chopping wood. That's why it says it right below your name, Jake.
Okay, sweet.
Oh,
I want to chop some wood. Because I brought up that group of offensive players that's in the top 5 players for Georgia in this class, and the one guy that didn't get mentioned is Moultrie's own Carr. All right. I got a chance to watch him work out on Saturday. Some time has passed. And after putting out an observations piece, and I just want to share with Georgia fans. I think he's legit, man. I think Georgia he's one of Georgia's top 5 commitments in this class right now. I don't think it may not end that way. He's not a super big guy. He's like 5'11", 5'10". He's super long, giant hands. He is a specimen, and he is explosive. He's a guy that, because he committed early, provided Georgia holds on to him and everything points to them doing that, because he is Landon Thomas's teammate. Landon Thomas is committed to Florida State. I think he's a guy that's going to get overlooked, and folks are going to talk about other people, and they're going to talk about Ryan Wingo. They're going to talk about, J.J. Smith, whether Georgia gets him or they don't, and they're going to talk about the cat from Parkview,
Mike
Matthews. But that dude right there, he's a football player. And I am very, very interested to see what happens when he gets to Georgia, because I think if he stays healthy, he's going to have a very, very successful Georgia football career. The guy he reminds me of, he's a tad bit smaller in terms of stature, but he possesses more length. He reminds me a lot of Lad McConkey. He's very explosive that way and very twitchy
Smaller
that
than
way.
Lad?
And I think he's very, very do what now?
Smaller than Lad?
In terms of shorter, I think he's shorter, maybe a little bit shorter than Lad, who's probably maybe 5'11 and a half, 6 feet. I think Carr maybe 5'10 and a half, 5'11.
Lad's taller than you think because when he's on the field with all those huge
but
SEC
he reminds me of Lad
players.
McConkey. Also, another guy he reminds me of, and Roos is going to like this one because I know how much you like this guy. Being kind of a 5'11 guy with extreme length, he reminds me of Chris Chambers.
Oh man, I knew you were going to say Chris Chambers. I love Chris Chambers, dude.
Yeah, Chris Chambers that played at Wisconsin, stud wideout. Played with the Dolphins, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah, Chris Chambers and the Chargers.
Yeah, had a nice little run there. Really good college wideout, and he reminds me a little bit of Chris Chambers in that way.
This kid's got like Mickey Mouse hands too.
He does, dude.
He's
He
got
had on those white
hands.
gloves. He had on those white gloves, and I don't know if you can accurately see it in the
Nike
photos
Carr does?
of them.
Yes.
Yeah. But I'm telling you, man. I mean, hi Mickey. I mean, I mean, it's ridiculous, dude. I almost took my daughter over to meet him.
His coach told us. His coach told me when he committed that he's like you said, he's like 5'10 ish. His coach told me he wears double XL gloves.
Jeez.
Just gigantic hands on the
Just
ends of
thunderclapping.
mitts, man. Yeah, thunderclap, absolutely. God, I love Chris Chambers. I'm so glad you mentioned him.
His hands look like those things you used to get out of the vending machine, the quarter turn deals, and
slap you.
slap
The
things.
stickies,
Yeah,
yeah,
just
yeah.
a giant thing on the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'll chop wood next. I was planning on talking about Stetson and Stafford, but it's fine because I've got something else. But encourage you to go check out the piece I wrote about those two today. Tomorrow we'll be down at the UGA Athletic Association board meeting. I know Jake is happy to hear that. We'll be hearing from Josh Brooks, Jerry Moorhead. So excited to hear what they've got to say about Georgia, Florida. I think there's probably going to be some discussion about baseball coach and what the future looks like there. Obviously, facilities. Think that there's always a lot of topics. SEC scheduling with spring meetings coming up, and those two plus Kirby and Mike White headed down there. So there's always a lot of topics to talk about with Josh and Jerry. So excited to hear from those two.
Can
Josh
you imagine
and Jerry over here? Just first name basis Palmer. Just my man Jerry over there. How you doing, buddy?
That was like a Nickelodeon show.
Josh and Jerry?
Yeah, absolutely.
Weekdays with Josh and Jerry.
If the Strickland change does happen, can you imagine being that baseball coach that has to come in and contend with Kirby Smart trying to claim every inch of territory up Lumpkin Street?
I'm here. They'll bring in Jimmy Leland. He's gonna be smoking darts in the dugout.
Yeah, that'd be a culture change. All right, Ro, take us or Roos. Sorry, Mountain Jake.
Either one, whatever, don't care. All right, so I guess for me tonight, I'm going to chop wood about that guy we talked about earlier, and that's Todd Hartley. And man, you talk about, Jake's mentioned this on the board before. I don't know if we talked about it here though. He was one of those guys that was kind of a little derided when he was hired because people were like, "Oh, it's a Rick carryover. Oh, this could never work." Where's he coming from? How does this guy fit in? All the guy has done since he's been there is reshape the face of the room and made Georgia into tight end U. He's developing the best. He's getting the guys drafted. He's recruiting the best. The guy is just flat out aces. And I think that Georgia is so lucky to have Todd Hartley on staff, man. I think that he loves that university about as much as anybody you'll find on that coaching staff, and that's Kirby Smart included. I think that Todd Hartley is a guy that Georgia is so lucky to have. I think he's doing a fantastic job. And I think that, as long as he's in control of that position, I don't see that train slowing down, man. I really don't. I think that Georgia's offense is built for it. I think he's recruiting it perfectly, and I think that it's just a win all the way around. The funniest thing I saw today about the Jaden Riddell commitment was from Andrew Bone over at our Alabama site, and he said, well, on the good side of things, Georgia is done recruiting tight ends this year. So now, and they've already got number 1 for next year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just that, like I said, there's no signs of stopping under Todd Hartley, and I think that they're going to continue to do that.
Very good, gentlemen. This has been fun. I'll let Jake Rowe get back to the Braves game. And I hope y'all have a great weekend. We're back here 8:30 p.m. on Sunday. Palmer won't be, though. He'll be having a responsible time at a concert.
Doing 0 drugs.
Y'all hit like and subscribe and check us out at DawgsHQ.com. We didn't even tell you all the best stuff because this channel is free. DawgsHQ cost you 100 pennies. So go over and check it out for 6 months. You're going to hear everything about what's popping next, what we're hearing on guys that were on campus today. Rusty dropped a hint. Chad Simmons dropped a hint about commits that could be coming up soon. I mean, it's just, it doesn't stop. It does not stop. So join us over there at DawgsHQ.com for $1, and we'll catch you back here on the Georgia Show, 8:30 p.m. on Sunday. See ya.